Cold pitching is just one of the strategies I use to make 6 figures in my food photography business. I also teach my students inside Profitable Food Photography to do the same. And these are just some of the results they're able to get using this method of marketing to book photography clients. So I'd like to think that I know a thing or two about cold pitching and sending emails to strangers and turning them into paying clients. Now, recently I got a DM from somebody on Instagram asking me if I'd look over their cold pitch to see where they need improving because they're not hearing back from clients. Now, the only time I actually provide this one-to-one style coaching where I look over my students' marketing strategies is through my program Profitable Food Photography. But I thought it would be really fun to actually make a YouTube video out of this so that everyone can learn collectively. So if you've been sending cold pitch emails and not seeing success, then stay tuned, because I'm not only going to dissect this email with my thoughts and what I see going on that's not right, but also show you what I would do instead to make sure that this email is not only getting opened, but also read and answered. Now, let's go. Now, looking at this email, the first thing I want to speak about is 2 things not seen here. And these are number 1, the email address, and number 2, the subject line of the email. Now, without spending too long on this, as it's something I cover extensively in my free cold pitching course in more detail, you want to ensure that you send your cold pitches to a very specific email. That is, to someone that's in charge of social media, photography, and marketing in the company that you're pitching to. And with regards to subject line, this is the first thing that a client is going to see in their inbox. This is what's potentially going to get them to either open or not open the email. So you want to ensure you have an enticing but also professional subject line. Okay, with those 2 things out of the way, let's get right into the meat of this email. Let's examine the greeting that starts off in this email. Hey guys. Now, when I read this, there's 3 things I think of. Number 1, this is a spam email because there's no name. Number 2, it's kind of unprofessional because you don't know if the person at the other end is a guy or a girl. And it's a little too casual considering at some point you want to work with this client and you want to be able to charge them thousands upon thousands of dollars. So unless it's a strong part of your branding to be so casual, addressing somebody so casually would be considered unprofessional in my book. And number 3, the person sending this email is lazy because they didn't take the time to figure out and investigate the name of the person they're sending this email to. So you want to make sure that for every single cold pitch email you're sending out, you're investigating and finding out the name of the person that's in charge of marketing and then addressing them by name in the email. Okay, now let's move on to the body of the email now. So the first paragraph is the introduction. And looking at that first paragraph, and in fact, if I scroll through the whole email in general, I still don't know the name of the person who's actually writing this email. Who's this from? Sure, I know that this person's a food photographer. Sure, I know what they do, but I don't know who they are. Who's this person? So moving into 2024 and beyond, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Personal connections are a must. That means you need to put your name, your face at the front and center of all your branding. And at the very least, it needs to be in the first line of your cold pitch email. Again, if I'm seeing an email that doesn't have a name and I have no idea who this is even from, I'm just going to think it's spam and I'm going to actually put this into my spam folder. And aside from that, let's say 6 months down the line when I have a photography campaign, how am I even going to remember who was that photographer that actually sent me an email if I don't have your name in the email? So it's super important to actually write your name in the very first line. Now, what I do like about the first paragraph is that it clearly states exactly what the person does, that they're a food photographer, and they're actually very specific about what they do in terms of shooting for restaurants and brands for their social media and menu. However, so what? Why should this brand care if they're a photographer? If this brand is a restaurant, why should they care that you're a photographer and you shoot menu? What's in it for them? What's the benefit for them? So your email always has to be about what you can do for the client and what benefit they'll get from your skill set. So a better way to present yourself as a restaurant photographer would be to show what ROI you can bring to this client. ROI meaning return on investment. So a quick example would be I specialize in food and beverage photography, creating stunning images for restaurants just like X being the brand you're pitching to increase the average order value, optimize menu presentation, and boost restaurant reservations. So can you see the difference here between what's in the original email and what I've just rewritten? The second example is a lot more ROI based. It's a lot more benefit driven. It's a lot more transformation driven. The restaurant or brand that you're writing to can clearly see what's in it for them. What's the benefit for them? If they continue reading this conversation or this email, what are they going to gain out of this? Okay, let's move on to the second paragraph that talks about previous clients that this photographer has worked with. And I really like that they've mentioned other restaurants because this helps to build the trust and authority factor with the client that they're cold pitching to. Now, I'd probably change this first line to I've worked with X, Y, and Z, and then mention the restaurants instead of if you're looking for a food photographer. The brand might not currently be looking for a food photographer, but your email is a way of introducing yourself. And by using words such as if or maybe, you're kind of putting doubts in the client's mind. So stay away from that kind of language when you're writing your cold pitches, where you're almost unsure of yourself. Now, the second half of this second paragraph also mentions quite a few celebrity chefs. And I would only be name dropping them if the current brand that you're pitching to also has a celebrity chef. If I'm a cafe or a restaurant that doesn't have a celebrity chef and I'm not really interested in that kind of thing, then this isn't adding any value to the cold pitch email. Okay, now let's look at the third part of the email. This person clearly mentions they have a portfolio, but doesn't actually include a link to it. Now, one thing to remember with clients is they don't have time. They barely have time to read emails or even open emails. They barely have time to reply to emails. So you really want to include a link to your portfolio in your original cold pitch email. Because what's the likelihood someone's going to respond back to a cold pitch email to ask, please send me a link to your portfolio? The whole point of this original cold pitch email is to introduce yourself. And you want to do that, you want to get that client out of the email and onto your portfolio so you can entice them with the images they see. So you want to send a link to it in your original cold pitch email to make it super easy for the client to access right away. Now, looking at the last line of the email here, which says, do keep me in mind for your photography needs. Again, it's really hard for clients to remember who you are, especially after just one email, and to actually respond to you when you have such a vague ending to an email which has no particular call to action. So I always like to end an email either with a question or a very specific call to action. So one example would be, would you like to schedule a free consultation call to see how I can help your restaurant refresh their menu? By asking a question, you're more likely to receive an email back and to elicit a response and actually get a reply rather than leaving the email very vague and very open as was done in the original email. Now, if you'd like a copy of the exact template I use and then how I customize my emails for different brands, because trust me, the gold is in the customization, then make sure you click the link in bio for my free mini course, which is 8 in-depth videos all about cold pitching that turn strangers into clients. It's only available for 7 days for you to access, so make sure you download it using the link below. Like I said, it's got all customization details as well as my template. Now, an important part of your cold pitch email is to link to your portfolio, like I mentioned. So I'd love for you to check out this video, which goes over the many mistakes I see food photographers make with their portfolios that really affects how clients respond and if they even respond. So make sure you check it out.